Hey everyone, welcome back to the Global Medical Device Podcast. My name is Etienne Nichols. I'm the host for today's episode. Today, I want to talk about winning over skeptics and some of the keys to product adoption in healthcare when it comes to selling those products directly to the healthcare professionals. And with me today to talk about that is Tiffany Ryder. How are you doing today, Tiffany?
Hi, good to be here.
Great to have you. Tiffany Ryder is a healthcare advocate and physician assistant with a passion for expanding access to medical care. After transitioning from her role as an NFL cheerleader, she gained extensive experience in rural emergency medicine and now is founder of Red Flag Heroes. She champions helping patients become better consumers of healthcare, which I have become pretty passionate about myself. I know you're passionate about equipping professionals with interacting with healthcare, interacting with medtech, and so on. Um, I wanted to talk about skepticism. I don't know if you wanted to touch on why that's an important topic to you.
Yeah, I think that I came into the world a skeptic. I have I have no fun, interesting story about why in particular skepticism has taken such hold for me. But I do think that it's the filter in which I process the world. And my experience as a patient and also as a clinician has showed me that filter serves me.
Yeah.
We'll just put it at that,
Well,
right?
and your patients. Yeah,
Yeah, but
absolutely.
there are multiple, reasons that this comes up, and I'm sure we will, get into that, but it's certainly the lens in which I view a lot of the innovation and approaches that we see in the healthcare space.
Yeah. I kind of jumped past it, but I gave you a brief bio. I wonder what would I miss? I know when I was looking through your background, you have done so many different things. I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to highlight or call out real quick.
I don't know. It's funny. Like I used to look at my background and I was a little embarrassed at how nonlinear it was. And then now I look at it and I'm like, this is so cool. I've like had the opportunity to fail in so many different ways and learn in so many different ways. Like, but I think an essential part of my background that doesn't always show, certainly not on my resume, but I almost wish it did, is that I grew up in a rural area of the country in Louisiana and didn't have health insurance or access to health care. We were really poor. We lived in a community that was very poor. And I think that that's shaped a lot of my perspective and the way that I look at things in a good way. In a good way, like knowing what those conversations behind closed doors look like when perhaps the doctor says you need a medication and there's just, it's more than your rent. Like,
Oh man.
how do you have those conversations? And then I moved to the DC area and um, enrolled in college and, tried out for the NFL. Actually tried out for the NFL the first time at 25, 30 pounds overweight. I didn't know what I didn't know, showed up, did my best, was in a place where I had a prediabetes diagnosis, PCOS, was being told by the medical community, it's okay. Like these are conditions that happen to people, and we give you metformin, and you do the best you can, and if you develop type 2 diabetes, which you certainly have a higher likelihood of doing so, like here's how we manage that. And and I believed that, and if it hadn't been for my desire to, I don't know, do something big and go into the NFL, and I hadn't, found myself in a position where I ended up losing those 25, 30 pounds and made the team and lost those diagnoses, like
Wow.
I
Yeah.
would have never known that I shouldn't have believed that. And so, all of these experiences, I think, certainly play into my interest in expanding conversations expanding the knowledge that patients have about perhaps what their clinicians do or don't know. And I think, that that's all part of the story of how I ended up where I am now.
That makes sense. When I think about a company coming to a healthcare professional trying to sell their product, I mean, the level of skepticism or uh, we could look at just your medical device or your medical background, your healthcare background, but
Mhm.
that doesn't really include your personal experience with healthcare. So a person may not understand that either. But all of those things are going to impact that product adoption. And what would you say is important for medical device professionals to turn those doubters, like if I'm trying to sell you a medical device and convince you my product really is better, what is it going to take for me to turn a doubter into a believer, do you think?
I love this. Such a great question. So, I mean, so let's start by saying, I think you have to have a good product, right? Like you have to have something, you have to have a belief that what you are offering is actually good for the world, for the other human that you're communicating with who actually wants good things for the world to care. I believe that, right,
Yeah.
there are forces at work, whatever they are, whether it is, subconscious, like nonverbal communication, or it is, energy in the universe, like I don't know. But I believe that, authenticity comes through. Um, so I think that's first.
Yeah.
So I think you have to actually not be selling snake oil. That's like the perfect first step. But I do believe that there are these pieces that you will just never know about the clinician or whoever it is that you're in a conversation with. Again, I identify as a poor person, and it doesn't matter if I, move past Elon Musk as the richest human on this earth. Like I am always going to be, affected by that sense. And, people who, perhaps have grown up under other circumstances are also going to have those biases. And so I think it's a matter of communicating with the information that you have on your end and saying, uh, I have this, this product, this device, this pharma product, whatever it is, I have this thing that I really think is good for the world. And you have people that in your orbit that I believe I could help. And how do I get that message across? And I think if that's the place that you're coming from of like, do I want to, sell 1 million of whatever this is? Absolutely, I do because I think that is what would be good for the world. And why wouldn't we all want that if we all believed that, this is true. Um, and so, I'm not a salesperson. Clinicians, like I like to joke about like we don't do anything. Customer acquisition is not an issue, right? Like you can see more patients than, as many patients as you have time for. But, I do believe that clinicians, physicians, NPs, PAs, everyone comes into the medical industry. Most of us come into the medical industry because we're not just looking for an easy job. We're not just looking for status to be able to say that we have a respectable place in this world. Yes, we need to, pay our rent, and yes, we, would like to do work that we find interesting. But I think that underlying all of that, there are easier ways to make money than practicing medicine. There are certainly ways that, require less emotional investment and time investment and delayed gratification for training and all of this. And so you have to assume that the person sitting across from you is someone who really cares about people, or at least once did very deeply. And I
Where
think
the
that,
system broke them.
right, like I think that is the base assumption. And so speaking to the concerns that someone, who sacrificed years of their life to be able to do this job would have, is a great starting point.
What's interesting to me about that is I think a lot of founders, when I talk to company and founders who are starting medical device companies, a lot of times they are starting it because a family member experienced something or someone they close to them experienced something. For example, one man I know started a company called Allergy. He wanted a non-invasive continuous glucose monitor because he just didn't know there was an option out there, and his wife had a diabetic issue, and so he started this non-invasive continuous glucose monitor. But I think that gets lost somewhere along the way when the company grows and other people are transition or other people are positioning the product to a
Mhm,
healthcare provider or whoever may be the purchaser of that product. And they may
mhm.
forget the initial stories that this saved someone's life or he dedicated his life to save his wife or whatever the case may be. And so when you are interacting, because you interact probably with hundreds of medical devices
Mhm.
on a daily basis, some
Sure.
of those just because you've always used those, maybe others that have entered your workflow as a newer product. I'm curious, are there any you just love because these are just great products, or are most of them in your world because they've always been in your world?
That's an interesting question and something I'm not sure that I've thought about previously. And I think, my off the cuff answer would be most products you use because they are what is in the environment and they are what you know. I can absolutely say that on a regular basis, I encounter random things that seem really cool. Uh, but I'm not going to use them because they're not part of my workflow. I definitely think that the conditions in which most of us are practicing is really important for any salesperson to consider. The idea that you show up to work and you are expected to be prepared to deal with whatever happens when you walk into the room, and not just in the emergency department, right? People show up to primary care or to surgeries, not having read all of the medical textbooks. Patients show up as they are, and you're expected to be able to pivot and improvise and make smart choices on the fly. And I think that with that comes a certain degree of time pressure of wanting to spend every moment that you have in the clinic or in the hospital doing your highest impact work, which is generally not learning a whole new system or a whole
Right.
new device or a way to do things. So, if I am going to spend my precious time, either the time that I really should be spending at home with my family, or sleeping, for example, right? If I'm going to finish a 12-hour shift and I'm going to say, oh, you know what's important? It's learning how to use this new gadget that we have. Like, I need a really compelling reason to
Yeah.
be willing to do that. And I think that is the space where, a medical device can make a difference. If you can explain to me how this is going to either change my life as a clinician, like while I'm on shift, and allow me to, either save time, right? Or produce more effective outcomes for my patients, or whatever, be more comfortable, like go home without my back aching, or whatever the question is, right? What you're doing that benefits my life and makes my life better allows me to function more effectively and serve the people that I really care about, which are the patients sitting in front of me. Or if you can deliver a better outcome for those humans that I care deeply about, now I'm listening.
Yeah.
Now I'm at least open. I'm not saying yes, but I'm at least open to the conversation. And believe it or not, the people whose job is to convince me to care about their device, they don't always approach it that way. Right.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I think, like, starting at that point, like, why should I care is definitely essential.
You told me a few stories, and so I don't know if you have one that you'd care to share, but you told me a few stories when we were kind of preparing for this about
Yeah.
people who have pitched things to you, whether it's new processes or new products. Anything
Yep.
come to mind that you, because I love hearing the actual, this is how it happened, this is what I was wearing, all of those details.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell a couple of stories. Certainly one that comes to mind is, well, this is not so much a story other than, just an example of really cool things that are in the hospital that we paid tens of thousands of dollars for, that aren't used. Like things like, we have this fancy medical device that is essentially a vein finder, right? So it's a light. I have no idea how it works. Don't pay a lot of attention to it, right? Because it sits in the closet. But we have patients on a regular basis who, for whatever reason, are difficult to get vascular access for, or to.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of things. There's ultrasound guided access. There's all sorts of ways to approach this particular problem. But one of the solutions that someone pitched at some point was this finder, this device, and it shines the light, and it's really cool. You shine it on the area where you're looking for this vascular access, and you can see the vasculature. Like it's almost like a little roadmap, and it
Yeah.
allows you to see through the skin. Like, how cool. Do you want a device where you can see through the skin? Like, yes, I do. And that device sits in the closet 98% of the time. I personally have never pulled it out of the closet to use it, um, because I haven't been convinced why this is worth my time pulling it out of the closet and learning how to use it and then, doing the things. Um, and on that note, we had some sales representatives who had come in, and apparently as part of the contract, the hospital was going to be using different IV equipment, like different needles, different access equipment, for lack of a better word. They were going to be sourcing it differently, and these pieces required a different approach when you were trying to, establish an IV in a patient. And um, most of the time, the nurses establish the IV access, and we show up and we say, "Oh, this is great. That IV access I ordered is here." And really, the only time that I am involved in getting access is when it's really difficult. And then they say, "Hey, we weren't able to do this. The team isn't available to come down and help us. Like, can you maybe come do this, ultrasound guided IV placement or something?" And anyway, so I come to work, I walk through the waiting room as I'm walking to my station. I sit down at my computer, and they're these two very nicely dressed young people, and I say, they want something from me. Like, this is my first impression is like, oh God, like, what do these people want? I've got, 20 patients that I need to see. I'm in my scrubs. My whole team is like in scrubs because that's the
Yeah.
appropriate gear. These people are wearing business casual, and I'm like, they have an agenda. What could it be? Anyway, so they're right in front of my desk, so I can't ignore them. So I go in and I say, "Hello, I'm Tiffany. I'm the PA who's coming on. What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, we have a treat for you. We're here to help you learn how to use our fancy schmancy like IV placement equipment." And I think to myself, okay, now I have a whole nother task, right? Like, there is this whole nother thing that I have just added to my plate that isn't doing the thing that, caused me to sacrifice years of my life to learn this skill so that I can help people. It is something that my hospital administration has now plunked on my plate, in addition to, all of the epic charting and, all of these other things
Yeah.
that I have to do. And I think that overcoming that sort of hurdle is is sort of a big ask. So I'm
Right.
I'm aware that, like, that the hill that has to be climbed is very high, but that's the reality of it,
Yeah.
right? And and immediately my thoughts are, okay, now I have to take time away from patient care to do this thing that I don't want to do. Um, I have these people who look well fed and like they've had time to go to the restroom and they are showered, who I now have to like appease in some way when, I know that I'm entering a 12-hour shift where I am not going to have time to do any of those things. Um, but then in addition, like, you can't help but have that skepticism of, well, did the hospital purchase this because it's actually better for my patients? Is this actually going to make my life better, or is it going to, create more successful outcomes for people that I care about? Or is this some sort of like arrangement that was better for someone's stock portfolio or what have you? And I'm not like, this
Yeah.
is not
No, it's
insider knowledge. Like I have no idea, but I have a healthy skepticism of conflicts, and these are my thoughts. And so I think it's a rough job for people out
sure.
there trying to make this happen.
Yeah. Is it just cheaper? Are you just trying to save some money? I could totally see where you're coming from with this.
Totally.
That being said, there have got to be some companies out there who do it slightly differently. And I'll try to give you an example outside the medical device world. So when I'm doing my video recording or whatever else, I saw someone using a gimbal, and I thought, wow, that thing looks so cool. I want to use that. And because the videos were a lot better, a lot of different things were a lot better. I'm curious if there's anything that translates to where maybe you see something like, I wish the hospital would buy this product because I saw it somehow. I don't know if you've ever experienced that or gone through that or something you just wish you had this tool that would and I don't you probably see where I'm coming from. What was the upstream effect that got you to think that? And maybe that I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but
I don't know. So it's an interesting question. And it's an interesting question because working in the emergency room, um, no, I mean, no one that I know. I'm not like the emergency
yeah,
room guru expert who knows everything about everyone, but no one that I know who goes to work in the emergency room does so without like a backpack or a locker or a whatever. We are notorious for being like, we don't actually care what the hospital provides. This is the thing that I need to
yeah,
do my job effectively. And for me, one of the things that I have to have is a headlamp. I have like a rechargeable LED, like, $150 headlamp for hunters. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure the camouflage band like has had to be replaced like at least twice. Um, because this is what I need to do my job because I really need to see well when I'm suturing the hospital, lights. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes they whatever.
yeah,
And so the answer is like, yes, there are absolutely things I know, like, just some docs that I work with, like have, a whole variety of things stashed for, everything from incising an abscess to establishing lines to we hoard things when we do get the equipment that we like. So yes, that happens. That is something I'm familiar with. I think it's really important. And in my experience, at least, it's always been like a grassroots movement. It's always, oh, I did this procedure with another doc, and like, or a specialist who came down to like do this thing, and I'm like, hey, man, what's that? How does that work?
yeah,
Can I buy it on eBay? Like, not really, but like, how do I get
yeah.
one of those?
How do I
Like,
get my hands on
how
that?
do you
Yeah,
find out about it? Or, I think that medicine is relatively territorial, and we all have like podcasts that we know, like, and trust, or people that we follow, and you see something on TikTok from like a doc that you follow that's in your specialty or whatever, and you say, oh, cool. Like, I don't know, I'm gonna try that. And so like in my experience, like it's really that like grassroots word of mouth from other clinicians who are in your space who speak your language, right? Who can
yeah,
say and aren't necessarily at the hospital selling it to you. But if I see that, that doc like talking about it on a, on a podcast or on a whatever, then I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wonder if we can, talk to those guys. Someone get that rep and get them in here, like, so we can like have this conversation. Or if it's a lower ticket item, like I'm just gonna buy it and then try it. And then I'm gonna tell every single one of my friends about it because that's what we are. We're a community.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Maybe we'll have to do an episode someday on what's in your backpack when you go to the
Exactly.
emergency room.
Butterfly ultrasound. Like there's just like
Yeah.
lots of interesting things. You should ask any clinician that you come into contact if they like have stuff that they bring to work.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm putting that on my list.
You should totally do that. I think you would get some interesting ideas and some interesting insight to talk about.
Yeah, if I could database that I could run one, so everybody carries this. Everybody has a headlamp. I saw Tiffany do it
Yeah.
and it's great. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's funny.
interesting. Um, I wonder if we could condense this into one golden rule that you think every medtech professional should have as they're thinking about developing this product, and that with the knowledge that someone's going to have to use this product, if you could think of just one golden rule to give those companies and those people to help win over skeptics, what would it be?
I think it's talking to the instead of talking to the people who love your product and are inclined to wanna love it, you need to find the most skeptical, the most like negative, derogatory person who's like on LinkedIn talking trash about whatever it is that you're trying to do. You need to talk to that person, right? Like I think that there's a lot of interest in, sort of finding your echo chamber of people who agree with you and are like on your team, and like those aren't really the people that you gather the most information from. Like you really need to be talking to the person who's like, you know uh I'm not like gonna allow you to use my patients as like your guinea pigs. Like,
Yeah,
here's the
yeah,
evidence I would need for me to even consider having a conversation about X, Y, and Z. Here's what's wrong with your product. Like, I know people who used it and you charge X, Y, Z, and this is the outcome. Never going to buy that. Like, having more conversations. I mean, I think from the very beginning of what's wrong is I think how you get there. And I can share, one more story
please.
about a conversation that I had with someone. I met someone at a conference, and we followed up, and this person was in the startup space. They were doing this, really cool work, where they were doing a test, similar to some things that are out on the market. They were doing a test to evaluate, different genetic flags, for lack of a better word, of just like what, Humira might work well for this patient, but it's probably not going to work well for that patient. Like, so those sorts of tests that would guide treatment, guidelines, would guide like maybe which drug you put your hand on first. And so, this young woman, explains to me what they're doing. She's very excited about it. She's very passionate, very authentic. She passed that test, right? Like the test
Yeah,
of
the first
like,
test.
yeah, first test of, do I believe that you actually care about my patients? And the answer was yes. And I said, oh, wow, this all sounds very exciting. Um, Here's what I'm thinking though, right? Like I'm thinking that access to my patients is a cash cow for you. So even if her product was amazing and was going to be transformative for my patients, I'm already coming to the conversation knowing that she's incentivized to believe that. And so I'm already skeptical right from that, like just from the get-go. And I said, really the hurdle that you're going to have to overcome is you're going to have enough data and enough evidence to prove to me that that you've overcome this bias. Like I already know that you're biased to want your product to work, but like I'm going to need it to be so overwhelmingly objective that I'm now like, okay, that might be worth it. right? For me to try this with a subset of my patients or what have you. Um, and I tried to have that conversation with her and she didn't really understand. She was like, but this is so wonderful. And I was like, yes, I hear you. And I even believe that you believe that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to need, XYZ in form of evidence. And so I think also like, just having the degree of evidence that you're going to have to present and the 10 different ways that you would present that evidence because everyone is going to need a different take on it.
Yeah.
I would say that in my experience most salespeople underestimate that, and when you're talking at least to a clinician, you shouldn't underestimate that. Maybe if you're just talking dollars and cents and it's a different conversation, fine. But when there's a clinical voice involved, I think that the level of evidence is going to be higher than you think.
Yeah. The level of data needed, I think, is important. The types of data, because I
Yes.
think when medtech professionals think data, they think, okay, X number of patients experience this percentage better increase, but we forget about the part of my workflow part. We forget about part of the ease of use, part of all of those
Yes.
different things that go into it. There's a lot of different aspects that you've touched on.
Yeah. Having a testimonial from a nurse saying, I use this and it's made my life easier in the following ways. And because it's easier, I'm able to take care of 4 patients instead of 3
Yeah. If you
at a
can get
time.
that from a
Like,
nurse, that's big because my wife's a nurse
that's
and
huge.
you talk about skeptics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. And I think that's also another, good point that I wish I saw more of. Like a physician should be leading the medical team. Yes, they should. But also, like, I want to hear how is your device affecting the nurses? What do they think about it? What does the NP think? What does the APP think? What does the phlebotomist in the office think? Like, whoever is going to come in contact with that patient in regard to whatever product or solution you're advocating for. I want to hear all of those voices, because it matters.
Yeah. Would you be open to people sending you products to use?
I don't know, maybe depends, right? Like if it's
A
a
new headlamp, that sort of thing. Maybe. I don't know.
yeah.
Just,
I
yeah.
mean, and that's how it is, right? Exactly. Like if you're gonna send me like something that's like a different version of something I use every day and that I think is valuable, like heck yeah, man. Like, right? Like I'll
Yeah.
try this thing. Is this cool? I don't know. Um,
But when it
but
comes
I
to
don't
this
think
could
that just
potentially
giving
hurt some.
away
Yeah.
what's that?
But when it comes to this could potentially hurt a patient, makes sense. Yeah. You wouldn't,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a whole lot more involved. Yeah.
There's a whole lot more involved, and you can't assume that just because it makes sense to you that it's going to make sense to whoever it is you're sending it to.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it. I always enjoy your passion when you talk about your patients and your work. Any thoughts or any last piece of advice that you give the audience?
Um, as a shameless advocate for, patient information, I would say, my big thing to leave would be when you have a device, when you have an offering or a solution that the patient needs to understand, um, how it works. I know you and I talked about, pacemakers, like if you're inserting a device into a patient's body, also, don't underestimate what those patients need to know, how those patients need to interact with clinicians and the medical system to be able to get the best use from whatever it is. So I think that, the education component is something that absolutely cannot and should not be neglected, from patients all the way through the medical team up to the physician.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's powerful. Thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate it. Those of you who are listening, really appreciate you listening. And we will see you all next time. Everybody take care.